Hello Army, welcome back to the channel, and if you are new here, welcome, because today we are doing something that I have been looking forward to since the Stanford Stadium run concluded, which is sitting down and giving the full 3-night story the comprehensive treatment it deserves. Because the BTS Arirang World Tour at Stanford Stadium was not just a concert series. It was a 3-chapter story. Each night had its own character, its own surprises, its own specific moments that became talking points in their own right. And across those 3 nights, one person in particular kept finding ways to make each evening distinctively his own, to bring something to each show that was different from what he brought the night before, to make audiences feel each time that they were witnessing something they had not seen before even within the same tour in the same venue. That person is Jimin. And by the time the 3rd night concluded, the evidence was overwhelming and completely undeniable. ParkJimin is one of a kind. There is no other. There never has been. And Stanford Stadium across 3 extraordinary nights in May 2026 gave the world the most comprehensive and most beautiful proof of that fact that anyone could have asked for. Let's start at the beginning, which means starting with what the Stanford Stadium run represented before a single note was played. The Bay Area is one of the most culturally significant and most musically sophisticated markets in the United States, a place with a long history of engaged and discerning concert audiences who have witnessed and celebrated some of the greatest live performances in the history of popular music. The decision to schedule 3 nights at Stanford Stadium, adding the 3rd night in response to overwhelming demand, was itself a statement about where BTS and specifically where Jimin stand in the consciousness of American music audiences in 2026. These were not 3 nights that were always planned. The 3rd night was demanded, was asked for, was created by the collective insistence of audiences that 2 nights were simply not enough. And so the 3-night run became something that had to live up to the weight of that demand, had to justify the decision to add another night, had to give the people who fought for tickets to day 3 something worth fighting for. What they got across 3 nights was not just worth fighting for. It was worth remembering for the rest of their lives. Let's talk about what made each night distinct, starting with the 1st night on May 16th, because understanding how the 3 evenings evolved in relation to each other is essential for appreciating the full arc of the story. Night 1 at Stanford was the establishment night, the night when the production found its footing in the specific acoustic and visual environment of the stadium, when the members calibrated themselves to the particular energy of the Bay Area crowd, when the relationship between the stage and the 60,000-plus audience was established for the first time. For Jimin specifically, Night 1 was the night of arrival, the moment when Stanford Stadium first understood what it was hosting, when the full force of his presence landed in that specific space for the first time. His visual presentation on Night 1 was deliberate and carefully considered, as every aspect of Jimin's appearance always is. But what struck audiences immediately was not just how he looked but how he inhabited the space, the specific quality of ease and command that he brings to every stage he steps onto, amplified by the particular scale and energy of a sold-out American stadium on the opening night of a 3-show run. Bay Area Army had been waiting for this. California had been waiting for this. And from the first moments of his presence on that stage, it was clear that the waiting was over and that what had arrived was everything they had hoped for and considerably more. The reviews from Night 1 captured something important about what made Jimin's first Stanford performance so significant, which is the way that the looser choreography format of the Arirang tour allowed his vocal performance to take the prominent role it deserved. This has been a consistent observation across the entire North American leg of the tour, that the arrangement of the shows gives members, and Jimin in particular, space for vocal expression that is not always as foreground in more tightly choreographed formats. At Stanford on Night 1, this was immediately visible and immediately felt. The vocal moments were not just accompaniments to visual spectacle. They were the spectacle, the thing that stopped people in their tracks and reminded them that what they were watching was not just a performance but an event. Night 2 brought developments. The accumulated confidence of one night in a venue, the calibrated understanding of how the acoustics and the sightlines worked, the specific knowledge of how Bay Area Army responds, all of this informed what Night 2 became, which was something more relaxed and more spontaneous than Night 1 without being less powerful. The spontaneous pop-lock cipher during Dynamite, Jimin, Jin, and Jungkook doing freestyle moves while Jin humorously stuck to the official choreography, is one of the moments from Night 2 that has been most widely circulated and most enthusiastically discussed, and it captures the specific quality of what a second night in a venue can produce. People who were there for both nights consistently reported that night 2 felt looser, warmer, more intimate in the way that growing familiarity creates intimacy even in spaces as large as Stanford Stadium. For Jimin's visual presentation, night 2 brought a different version of himself, a different hairstyling, a different quality of how he presented within the framework of the shared production. The K-News article covering the 3-night run specifically noted that across the 3 nights Jimin entertained fans with a different hairstyle each time, each one creating a distinct visual impression, each one slightly reframing the character he brought to the stage. This is not vanity or inconsistency. This is the specific and deliberate use of visual language as part of a performance artist's toolkit, the understanding that how you present yourself communicates meaning that extends beyond aesthetics and into the emotional content of the experience you are creating for your audience. Different hair for different nights at the same venue is Jimin saying, with every fiber of his artistic intelligence, that he refuses to repeat himself, that even within the same tour and the same set list, he finds new ways to give you something you have not seen before. And then came night 3. May 18th. The night that the K-News article headlines described as the one that made fans who saw blood, sweat and tears from Jimin for the first time fall in love all over again. The night that produced Jimerica. The night that generated the slogan that has become one of the most celebrated and most shared pieces of ARMY creative expression from the entire Stanford run, once you are Jimin you cannot be Jim out. Let's talk about all of this properly, because night 3 deserves the full depth of attention that the first 2 nights were building toward. Blood, Sweat and Tears is a song that occupies a very specific place in BTS's history and in ARMY's emotional landscape. Released in 2016 as part of the Wings album, it represented a significant artistic leap for the group, a more complex and more sophisticated piece of music and visual art than anything they had produced before, darker and more conceptually ambitious, drawing on literary and artistic references that invited interpretation and rewarded careful attention. The music video became one of the most discussed and most analyzed pieces of K-pop visual art ever made. And the live performances of Blood, Sweat and Tears, particularly the ones that showcased Jimin in the specific and extraordinary role that the song and its choreography carved out for him, the role that Korean fans described as the fan-attracting fairy, referencing his 2016 Mama performance, became some of the most legendary moments in the group's live performance history. When Blood, Sweat and Tears appeared in the Stanford Night 3 setlist as a fan-voted surprise edition, the same tradition that had given Night 1 N.O. an Onpanman, the stadium responded with the specific quality of collective shock and delight that only comes from getting something you had hoped for but dared not fully expect. And then Jimin began to perform it. And the stadium, which had been screaming, went into a different register, the specific register of being in the presence of something genuinely extraordinary, of watching someone inhabit a role so completely and so perfectly that the years between when you last saw them do it and this present moment collapse into nothing. The K-News coverage described the response from fans seeing Jimin perform Blood, Sweat and Tears for the first time in years in language that captures something real about what happened. They said he appeared exactly like the fan-attracting fairy that he portrayed during his activities in 2016. And fans seeing the Blood, Sweat and Tears Jimin for the first time in a long time, a legendary performance that continues to be talked about as an unforgettable performance in the K-pop industry, reacted by saying that they fell in love with him again, captivated by his artistic movements and charisma. Those words, "fell in love again," are not metaphor or hyperbole. They are a precise description of an actual experience that thousands of people had in Stanford Stadium on May 18th. They had been in love with Jimin before. They were in love with Jimin going into night 3. And then Blood, Sweat and Tears happened, and the love deepened, became more specific, found new dimensions that the previous nights had not fully revealed. This is what makes Jimin extraordinary as a performer, and what the 3-night Stanford run demonstrated with such comprehensive clarity. It is not just that he is excellent. It is not just that he has extraordinary technical abilities as a vocalist and a dancer and a visual communicator. It is that he has the specific and rare quality of being able to make people feel more every time they encounter him, of adding to the love rather than diminishing it through familiarity, of finding new ways to reach people who thought they had already been reached as fully as they could be. 3 nights in the same stadium, the same person, and each night ARMY found new reasons to be overwhelmed. That is not something that technical excellence alone can produce. That requires the kind of genuine artistic depth that only comes from someone who is completely, authentically, irreplaceably themselves every time they step on a stage. Let's talk about Jimerica and the Jim in Jim out phenomenon, because this is one of the most joyful and most genuinely affectionate cultural expressions that has emerged from the entire Arirang World Tour so far, and it deserves to be celebrated properly. The concept of Jimerica, Jimin plus America, the specific relationship between ParkJimin and the American army and the American music landscape, is not a new idea. Jimin has had a deep connection with American fans since the earliest days of BTS's Western breakthrough, and the specific intensity of American Army's love for him has been a consistent feature of his global fanbase profile throughout his career. But the Stanford shows gave that connection a new name and a new visual vocabulary that have stuck in a way that feels permanent. The fan posters during Army Time, the segment of the shows where audience-created content is displayed on the stadium screens, show Jimerica banners alongside the Jim In Jim Out slogan, and the response from the 60,000 people in the stadium to seeing their collective love for Jimin expressed in those terms was everything you would expect from a Bay Area crowd that had been feeling exactly what those words described. Once you are Jim In, you cannot be Jim Out. It is funny. It is true. It is a perfect compression of the specific quality of Jimin's impact, the way that encountering him genuinely changes you, makes you permanently different in a specific and Jimin-shaped way that does not diminish with time or familiarity. The banner showing Jimin wearing the hair hat at comedian Lee Suji's Rendezvous Beauty Salon, the content that had previously drawn significant attention and demonstrated a different, more playful side of Jimin, also appeared on the screens during Army Time at Stanford, to the delight of an audience that recognized it and understood the reference. This is the specific quality of the BTS-Army relationship that makes it so different from typical celebrity-fan dynamics, the depth of shared knowledge, the specific cultural currency that has been built up across years of mutual attention, the way that an inside reference from a previous context can land with total completeness at a stadium show in California months later because the community carries all of it with them everywhere they go. Now let's think about what the three-night Stanford run means for the larger story of Jimin's 2026 and for what the Arirang World Tour is accomplishing as it continues through its North American dates and beyond. Stanford was not the first significant stop on the tour, and it will not be the last. But it has a particular significance in the narrative of this year for a combination of reasons: the three-night run, the addition of a night in response to demand, the specific cultural weight of the Bay Area as a music market, the blood, sweat and tears performance, the Jimerica phenomenon, and the accumulated evidence across 3 consecutive nights that Jimin's ability to be different and surprising and new within a fixed framework is essentially unlimited. The SF Chronicle review that came out during the Stanford run, which described a BTS in 2026 that is completely different from the one that performed at Oakland Arena in 2018, with greater emphasis on live vocals and more mature themes, provides the mainstream critical framework for understanding what the 3 Stanford nights demonstrated. What Jimin showed across those 3 nights is consistent with what the Chronicle observed about the group as a whole, but magnified through the specific lens of an artist who has always used the full range of his capabilities to communicate something genuine in every performance. The mature themes that the Chronicle identified, the ones that distinguish 2026 BTS from 2018 BTS, are themes that Jimin in particular has been engaging with deeply in his solo work, themes that run through Face and through his contributions to Arirang and through the specific quality of what he brings to the live performance of both. Blood, Sweat and Tears in 2026 is not the same performance it was in 2016 because Jimin in 2026 is not the same person he was in 2016. He carries more, knows more, has been through more, and all of that more is present and visible in how he inhabits a song that he has been living with for a decade. Let's also appreciate what the Jimerica phenomenon specifically says about the relationship between Jimin and American audiences, because I think there is something worth examining carefully in why this particular framing, the idea that once you encounter Jimin you cannot leave, has resonated so strongly and so quickly. The American music landscape in 2026 is one in which the barriers between K-pop and Western pop music have largely dissolved, in which BTS is recognized as a genuine and significant part of the American cultural conversation rather than as a foreign curiosity. In that landscape, Jimin's specific appeal to American audiences is not about novelty or exoticism. It is about the same qualities that make him compelling to audiences everywhere: the authenticity, the artistic depth, the specific quality of presence that makes everything he does feel like it is happening for the first time even when you have seen it before. Once you are Jim In, you cannot be Jim Out. American Army created that phrase because they recognized something true about their own experience of Jimin, and in doing so they gave a name to something that millions of people around the world have felt without being able to put it quite so perfectly. The experience of falling in love with Jimin is not a one-time event. It is a process. It deepens. It finds new dimensions with each new performance, each new creative work, each new moment of genuine selfhood that he shares with the people who love him. 3 nights at Stanford Stadium gave 60-something thousand people per night multiple new dimensions of that love, new reasons to be Jimin, new experiences that ensured they could never be Jim out. Jimin proved something at Stanford that does not require explanation or argument because it was so completely and so comprehensively demonstrated. He proved that one of a kind is not just a phrase that fans use about artists they love, not just a superlative that gets inflated by the enthusiasm of devotion. He proved that it is a literal and accurate description of what he is, an artist whose combination of qualities, whose specific way of being on a stage and in a song and in the world, genuinely has no equivalent. You can find other excellent vocalists. You can find other extraordinary dancers. You can find other performers with magnetic presence and natural charisma. But the specific combination of all of these things in the specific way they exist in Jimin, producing the specific quality of impact that 3 nights at Stanford Stadium documented, you cannot find that anywhere else. You have never found that anywhere else. You will not find it anywhere else. 3 nights. 3 different versions of the same extraordinary person. 3 nights of evidence that once you are Jimin, there is no out. Jamaica understood this. Stanford understood this. And the rest of the world is finding out. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, it genuinely helps the channel reach more people. Drop a comment below telling me which of the 3 Stanford nights you would most have wanted to be at, and what specific Jimin moment from the run hit you the hardest. Subscribe if you have not already, share this with your fellow army, and I will see you in the next one. Purple you all.